Welcome to Plato's Academy. We're back with the Twinstitution to talk about some Greek words today.
Greek words?
Greek words. Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to go
Why
Greek.
words? Okay.
Because Plato's
Because it's all Greek to you?
Because it's all Greek to me.
It's all
and I
Greek
love
to
it.
me, too.
And I love it. I wish I knew more Greek.
Yeah.
All I know is some Greek words, and I use them every year. And I want to start with one of the best
Get my
ones.
buddy Theo Harvard. He knows all about Greek. He
I love
teaches
it.
Greek.
That's
right?
awesome. Maybe
Latin.
we can get your buddy Theo to come.
Yeah. Classicist.
Yeah. We could. That's true. But I want to start with the Greek word that I know we both know and that is really important to us in our life.
Yep.
And I know when I first discovered it, I thought, oh, that is, first of all, it sounds cool.
Yes.
Eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia.
I mean, that just sounds cool.
Yes. Beautiful.
Eudaimonia.
Yeah. It's like euphony.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know what that means. But anyway,
Sounding
euphemism.
good. The opposite of cacophony.
Yeah, euphemism. I got that. But eudaimonia sounds much cooler.
Yes.
And so it's a very fundamental idea to the moral life.
Yeah, to moral
and
philosophy.
to the Catholic and Christian life.
Yes.
It makes a lot of sense, and it's something worth knowing about. So I just wanted to delve into
Great
that word
Love
first.
It. Yep.
Why is that word? What does a word mean in general? And this doesn't just have to be for you, but for us to deal with in general in this dialogue, right? What is that word? Why is it important? Why should we know about it? Why should we try to bring it back? Why should more people in an educated society know that?
Yep. So we all want to be happy, right? Mm-hmm. And so we want to know what that is, so that if we knew what that was, then we could aim at that and as our goal, as our explicit goal, if we knew what happiness was. Mm-hmm. And the better we know what that is, the better we know our goal. And the better we know our goal, the better we can actually acquire the means to get there, right? And so, that's what the word means, right? Eudaimonism is the ultimate goal of human life, you might say. It's the achievement of human happiness, right? And so that's the concept that Aristotle uses. So in Nicomachean Ethics, the greatest textbook in ethics ever written, right, in the Western world, right, that's the aim of everybody, is eudaimony.
Eudaimony? Yeah. Did you just make a word up? I love it.
Eudaimonia. Sorry. Eudaimonia.
I love
is what we're all aimed
though.
at.
That is super cool.
My thing's making noise here. Okay. Turn it off.
That is super cool. It was Socrates that was texting you right there.
Socrates
that was
really?
said, that was like, eudaimony? You need to get to the state of eudaimony. Heaven is eudaimony. Okay, so eudaimonia, I love it. So it's happiness. So obviously everyone's trying to be happy.
Yeah, but so I tried to cash it out for you so that it was the goal. Mm-hmm. The goal we're aiming at. Because happiness, when we hear happiness, it's like, are you happy today? Yeah, I'm happy today. Are you happy today? No, I'm not. I've had a bad hair day. Yeah. So happiness is like a episodic feeling.
So you cash it out when you talk about it. Do you talk about this in your classes
Absolutely.
At all?
This very word. I have in fact, I have a handout where it says in the middle of the handout, eudaimonia. Right? And there's all these little words that can be translated into English. Okay. Right? So like blessedness, right? Yes. Or thriving, or flourishing, well-being, life well lived, and of course happiness. So that's the semantic range, of the word eudaimonia.
Because obviously that's a Greek word and it has a lot of...
Yes, so I like using the Greek word because then you can sort of it makes you think explicitly about the concept as different. So it makes the concept become something you're overtly aware of. I love what you just
said. If we use the word eudaimonia, then it gets us out of all the truncated meaning of the word happiness in our culture, which is essentially related to getting what you want, feeling good, having a feeling of contentment, something like that, which eudaimonia is not about having contentment, feeling contentment.
So what is it about? So that's the key idea. And the key idea is its relationship to human nature. Mm-hmm. So if you think about Aristotle's examples, the harpist, right, or the sculptor, right, or the flautist, or whatever. There's a certain function, a characteristic set of activities that make a harpist play the harp. Which, let's say, using your fingers. Well, that's not characteristic because that's what a trumpeter does and a pianist, right, or a violinist. So it's using the fingers in the way, sitting down at a certain instrument in a certain order,
this way,
right? Yes. So it's characteristic activities. Yes. So when those are done well, right, then that harpist achieves the goal of harping, you might say, playing the harp. And so then he calls that the function of the harp, playing the harp. And the word in Greek is ergon. It means proper work, right? And so what's the proper work of playing the harp? It's doing those characteristic activities well, doing them excellently, or doing them in accordance with excellence. Another name for that is virtue.
Or arete.
Or arete, exactly.
Another Greek word.
Then he says, well, does a human being have a function? Right? And he sort of, in a complicated way, seems to argue that the human being has a function, and that function would be his characteristic activity as a living thing. So what's characteristic of a human being as a living thing? It's not metabolism and nutrition, right? It's not locomotion and sensation. It's all those plus rationality.
Yeah.
And so our characteristic activity is rationality. Doing that well,
Our characteristic activity, meaning the thing that makes us us.
yes, that's unique as living things, as living
Because other
beings.
living things have locomotion.
Yes.
Animals. Other living things have sensation. Plants and animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what makes us unique. And so that's like the harpist, that's characteristic activity. And so that being done well is the proper work of being human, humaning, if you will. So when we do that, we achieve the goal that's inherent in our nature. That's eudaimonia. So when we're doing it well, that's a full life. We're actualizing all our potencies,
Yeah.
right? We're fulfilling all of the powers that we have, right? And achieving the maximum that our nature can do.
That's excellent.
That's eudaimonia.
I love it. That's great. I don't have much to add. You got everything.
Yeah, cool.
I could think of
Did you have other Greek words? You were kind of...
Yeah, I mean, arete is great. I mean, that was virtue. You mentioned that. You know, we teach in, I teach high school, so obviously it's a little different, but we teach that it doesn't just mean virtue in terms of morality. It means virtue in terms of doing something well, and that doesn't always have to do with morality.
Yeah.
So just accomplishing this activity well until it get to its end is arete, excellently. Like you said, even harpists, I mean, if they're playing well, right, they have this excellence to be able to play well. That's not necessarily moral.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about virtue in the sense that we use
Moral virtues.
moral virtue, what we mean is they're doing the human things the way that humans are supposed to do their human
humaning
things.
well.
They're humaning
I
well.
can
So they
make a
have
verb.
eudaimony,
Yes.
which is your word.
That's funny.
The other one that I talk a lot about because I teach Plato's Republic is dikaiosune,
Oh yeah, that's great.
which is can be translated. I mean, one translation I used has morality.
Wow. Okay.
Weird, huh?
Yeah.
And the other one has justice.
Yes.
That's a common one.
Right.
But they can be used in different contexts because when you
Righteousness
think
in
of
the New Testament,
justice,
it's righteous.
and Paul
Righteousness.
uses it as righteousness.
Yeah.
Right. That's correct. But what's interesting is it's kind of all those things. And
Yes.
the Greek, again, like having a word in the middle of a page and then having it fleshed out.
Yeah, the
Righteousness,
semantic range.
rightness, right living, whatever, justice, being just,
Well-ordered.
well-ordered. Yeah, all that is dikaiosune. And this is a kind of condition, it seems like, that human beings have or can live. But
Yes.
what's the difference between eudaimonia and dikaiosune?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So when I think of dikaiosune and as justice, I think of what Aristotle calls justice in general, which is the name of the virtue of us overall. So the virtue according to which our living and our activities are eudaimonistic, right, is dikaiosune. It's the virtue overall. Right now, there's more than one of those. So he talks about if there's more than one virtue, then it's life according to all the virtues, and all of them together would be complete virtue. So a name for that would be dikaiosune.
Yeah.
Complete virtue.
Yeah.
Right.
The righteous, and
Yes.
I mean, when we think in terms of Christianity, we would think of righteousness.
Yes.
Right. We're being properly ordered by God and His grace.
Yes.
In our nature, our nature is not eliminated. Our nature is not canceled.
Yes.
It's being brought out.
Yes.
And perfected
And
by
so,
grace.
That's right. And so the just shall live by faith.
Yes.
Or the righteous, the dikaiosune, I don't know the correct proper form of that word, shall live by faith. So faith is our knowledge of God's will, right, that He's revealed to us. We live according to that, and so we're just, right?
The other word, I think the reason why they this translator translated it morality, was because he wanted to not have us think about justice in terms of political or civil justice, where you think in terms of justice is bad guys getting caught and put in prison, good guys being rewarded. So he wanted to get away from that idea of justice because we think so often about that.
Yes, you're right.
And
We've lost touch with the cosmic dimension of justice. Like
Yeah.
the whole universe is justice, and there's universal laws that are represented in the cosmos, like Plato and Aristotle think in the ancients.
Right.
Of course, we think that's God and His nature and His will.
Right. And they thought it was the universe.
Yes.
And being in harmony.
And that's where the
with it.
natural law is your participation in that eternal law.
Yeah.
Justice itself.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
So so dikaiosune would be like the state or the habit you're in, and then eudaimonia is activity. That's what Aristotle says. It's activity of the soul. So it's an activity, and dikaiosune is a state or a habit, right?
Yeah, I was going to say dikaiosune is a condition, but you're right. It's a state.
It's a state or a habit. Or
Yeah.
in Greek, hexis is the word.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. In Latin, it's habitus,
Okay.
right? And sometimes in English, it's translated state,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
It's a stable condition that you're in.
that's great.
Right, a disposition or an inclination, a directionality of your will and your feelings that is sort of there by default.
Yeah,
You're ready to do a readiness.
that's excellent.
Yeah,
That's great. I mean, and so then we have eudaimonia, or in your new term, eudaimonia. So eudaimonia is dikaiosune. Eudaimonia is the state.
Okay, I see. The made-up word is
the state of the activity of eudaimonia. When you're doing eudaimonia, when you're eudaimonistic.
Yeah.
Then you have eudaimonia.
Yeah, we get it. But the original Greek word is eudaimonia.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is no such word as eudaimonia. I just played around.
Exactly.
Yeah. The other word we talk about is suke.
Okay.
Which, mind or soul. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of interesting.
So spell that, because the reader might not know how you're spelling that.
I think it's P-S-U-C-H-E.
Yes,
that's the transliteration.
Or P-S-Y-C-H-E.
Yeah.
Psyche.
Right.
Right. We might say it that way, or suke. Right.
Yeah.
Or it starts with a P, though. P-S.
Yeah.
So psychology comes from that word.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And the psyche, thinking of the psyche like the mind.
So tell us about that, or you can comment upon it.
Well, the main thought is the connection to what we know. First of all, you just said it. I mean, psyche is the psychology has to do with mind, but the mind and soul are kind of the same thing.
Yes. And what's soul? This is something I think important. What's soul for the ancient, like Aristotle? What is soul? Is it the
animating principle of our life is soul?
That's funny you said animating principle, because in Latin, anima means soul. And so that's how I actually teach it. And when in class, it's like, what's the difference between inanimate things and animate things? Well, animate things have an anima, meaning a principle of life.
That's good.
Something that makes them alive.
Yeah.
That all living things have something that makes them alive. That's called the soul. That's not a thing that splits off and floats away.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like the ghost that goes away and waits for the resurrection.
I always think of that moment. I tell my students this is kind of fun, is that if they've ever seen Harry Potter, those of you that think that Harry Potter's evil may not have seen it. Those of you that think Harry Potter's good has probably seen it. Yeah. But the movie where he's laying down at the lake and
I always bring that same thing up. No twin
Harry
moment.
Potter and
there's a soul floating away.
This white soul floats up into nothingness,
Sucks
and
back
then
in.
the Dementors, they're going to take it out of him.
Yeah.
And it's like this orb.
Yeah.
And so that's not the Christian view of a soul.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. Although what's complicated about the Christian view of the soul is that obviously when you die, that's not the end of your existence. And then you await for the resurrection. Explaining that is a very complicated and interesting philosophical issue.
Yeah.
But something that all of us should be interested in explaining as Christians.
Because we can't exist without our body for some.
Yes, we can't exist. Our existence isn't over.
Right, but it's not our forever existence.
No, it's a state of like a decrepit state of being.
The intermediate state of being.
Yeah, it's like if I cut off your arm and I cut off your arm, you're getting more debilitated until I cut off your whole body.
Yeah.
Then you're like maximally debilitated.
Yeah. I don't know why I laughed at that.
It's just a funny image, I think.
Yeah, I think I was imagining you.
You're getting slowly chopped down, and there's like nothing. There's like one cell, and like it's
just
gone.
the Plato head.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are some words, but I think it's important to understand those if we're going to get in the Western tradition.
Yes.
We're going to get into Plato's Academy and think like these great people thought. These are the concepts they were thinking with.
Yeah.
And obviously what's amazing now is how much those concepts are not part of the conversation. I'm thinking, and it's interesting at public school when I taught there.
Yeah.
Every single public school student
Yep.
was interested in normative questions.
Yeah.
Questions about the soul,
Yes.
the body, heaven, religion, politics, morality, beauty. That's what they're all interested in.
Right.
But those are the questions that they didn't ask.
Right.
Not that they didn't ask in class.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Here's the big whopper Greek word.
Yeah.
Right. Ousia.
Yeah.
Right. Being. Right. And so when Aristotle talks about the metaphysics and he's discussing with that, and he says, well, we've all puzzled over this word. What is being? What is ousia? Or what are the ousiai, plural? He said, we've all puzzled about that. I think the question, what is being, is nothing but the question, what is substance? So Aristotle now switches. So Plato is all about the ousiai, which are the forms, right? And then when we finally get up to the fast forward to Christian era in the creed, right? We believe in one God, right? Father Almighty, consubstantial, right? Homoousios, right? So God is one ousia, one being. Right, and so that term is super important in Greek, and it's a
whole nother.
That's a rabbit hole. That's metaphysics.
Well, even the idea in all the early Christological debates, one of the Christological councils, obviously ousia and suke, and this idea of what about person?
Yes.
Soul, mind, substance, or being.
Yes.
Person.
Yes.
Those are the words that they discussed, and we just take them for granted.
Yes.
So much.
Hypostasis, person, right, becomes a new concept in civilization. Yes, you had the Latin term persona in like ancient Roman times, but that is not the concept that was developed in the Christian era. That's a new concept.
Yeah.
And I think that is a metaphysical revolution in the history of man.
Absolutely.
And that we could plummet that down to the very ground until
Yeah.
until we think as a Trinitarian that being is personal, right? The ultimate personal thing is being.
Well, what's
Right?
interesting here is that not that we can do it, have time here, but that Dave Rubin was talking with Jordan Peterson and
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro, and he was trying to
Yeah,
kind of.
you're telling me about that. I didn't see that.
He was kind of trying to get them to talk about like the difference between Judaism and Christianity.
Okay.
I think
Jordan
and Christ.
Peterson represented
Jordan Peterson was
Christianity.
representing like that Christ matters.
Yeah.
Right. And there, Ben Shapiro was kind of talking about the differences, but
Yeah.
what he said. And what's interesting is what you're just saying now.
Yeah.
Is Shapiro has certain ideas about God that are correct, but he doesn't have the same ideas about Christ. That obviously it's because he's not a Christian.
Yes.
But he puts Christ, I think, in a boat.
Yeah.
That is not even. It's not it's not necessarily Catholic either. So he's thinking of a specific Christian theological tradition. I think of that.
Kind of a generic Christianity. It's been
Yeah.
the result of a lot of
Yeah.
Protestant
Yeah.
Catholic interplay for hundreds of years.
But what's interesting is these concepts are is at issue.
Yes.
These concepts.
These very concepts.
Because his version was that in his mind it was like Christianity teaches that you can't, you're supposed to be like God, you're supposed to be really good, but you can't be really good because of sin. So somebody had to come take the sin on you, from your sin on him. That's Jesus. He took that. So now you can kind of be good. And so like that's whereas Jews are like, no, you have to actually work to be good. You have to actually make yourself good.
You can see the dialogue there.
And I'm just like, but Peterson knew this.
Yeah.
Peterson said that, well, you're thinking in terms of like Protestant versus Catholic theology and Orthodox. It's like he saw like Protestant, that's Protestant, Catholic is like in between there, and Orthodox is like where he's more interested in.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Okay.
Which is the
and how
idea
does that relate to the Jewish idea?
Because it is about actually being like God.
Yeah.
But you need to become like him. And
Peterson
kept saying, take on the suffering of Jesus.
Infused righteousness
that's what it
versus
was.
imputed.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Versus
but
just
to me,
declared.
It's about our human nature.
Yes.
Eudaimonia, dikaiosune.
Yes.
You have to have grace, perfect nature. But for grace to perfect nature, it's not a transaction. That's Protestant.
Yes.
It's a process.
Yes.
It's a process where your work, your effort, you taking on suffering like Christ, you being Christ, is not you being Christ, apart from a personal relationship with Christ, a person and another person having a relationship.
Yeah.
That is what does the perfecting.
It's so interesting because when I think about it theologically, I think from the Franciscan intellectual tradition, I think that grace, infused grace, right, sanctifying grace in the beautification of your soul is like the result of the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. It's like the Holy Spirit comes down into your soul, right? And it's like there's a resting place where the Holy Spirit is. That resting place creates a shape in your soul. That's sanctifying grace. It's the beautifying form in your soul. But it's like, why? Because divine charity is there, right? So an analogy that some thinker would say is like if the Holy Spirit left, right, that impression wouldn't remain there because it's like water, right? If the Holy Spirit moves, then it just forms back in.
Yeah.
And so the presence of the Holy Spirit, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit is what it's about, divine charity. So sanctifying grace means divine charity is there. It means the person of the Holy God is there in person inside of you. And what is he just like zapping and changing you? Right? No, he's like working with you. Right? He's intimately connecting and interweaving himself in your soul. And there's literally a metaphysical relationship, a touching inside of there. Right? And that requires you to do things in your mind, in your heart, in your will, in your choices. So it has to be that sort of working together and forming an interrelationship, which is what the evangelical world gets. But they don't get the sort of metaphysical theology behind it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
We should have one about that. Think about that.
Yeah.
A dialogue particularly about our conversion.
Yeah.
Maybe and a conversation about the metaphysical part you said, because to me the evangelicals get so much right.
Yep.
Wonderful, beautiful people. Know a lot of them still, but there's something that's not quite there theologically, and metaphysically,
there's some
and philosophically.
theological gaps.
Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I think that's good. I think we hit some good Greek words: dikaiosune, eudaimonia, arete. The main one, suke, maybe a couple other ones that you mentioned. But that was really good.
Yeah, I
enjoyed
appreciate it. That was fun. I have some interesting questions and stuff for you later, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Adios.
Adios, amigos.